You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions. Your host tonight is the author of the Pro-Black Compendium and Zuberi and the Maroons of Maa, the Pan-African Nationalist, Oni. Oni, what are we discussing tonight?
So today should be a short one. We're going to discuss something that should puzzle you if you are unaware of war and warfare. And truthfully, everything should puzzle you if you are unaware of war and warfare. So there is this phenomena going on where, or there's this common phenomenon where black people are being used as assassins for other black people. Okay, or even, let's say, the phenomena of what some would call coons, if you will. But all the same, let's go to this thing. But of course, in the Pro-Black Compendium, we call them askari. All right, askari are that's a word, I believe, Arabic word for a black soldier for a non-black army. Okay, a non-black military. So askari are really useful, and they're useful to, non-black people for a plethora of reasons, right? And in this one, I want to review them. But the main issue I want you to comprehend is this idea of, let's say, at the time of Malcolm X's murder, right? Why was it that there were black people who took the fall for the murder? Mostly because, those in the know that there were white people who killed him. Okay? Now, it's been a while since I reviewed the material, so if you're really interested, go look at it for yourself. But from the story that I understand, the NYPD took over the balcony. But basically, here's how it goes. Malcolm X knew that he was going to die that day. Okay? I think he opted for his family to not go with him. To not take a walk with him. Like, he took a walk outside, figuring, hey, it'd be better for me to be killed outside, my family not watching, no spectacle. Better for me to just walk outside, get shot, than to be killed in front of, my family, pretty much, in the front row, right? He obviously didn't want that to happen. He didn't want his family to, watch him get murdered or whatever, right? But, as the story goes, he was, of course, murdered, right? Somebody's, some NOI people, Nation of Islam people, sitting in the audience, one of them says, "Get your hand on my pocket," causes a, little commotion and distraction. Then another one runs up to him, and, as the story goes, they blast him with a gun, maybe a shotgun, I'm not too sure, point blank. And that right there is, considered the killing blow, right? Maybe other gunmen. And I know you're saying, well, Oni, why didn't you review this before recording? And because this is not the important part of this recording, right? But here's how the story also plays out, right? The NYPD, maybe even, American intelligence agencies, like FBI, CIA, who cares, right? They rent out the upper balcony, right? They rent out the upper floor. So truly, they have gunmen up there during this distraction period who are said to have really shot the killing shot, right? On top of that, if I recall correctly, there's that Asian woman that, black people like to celebrate. It's either the Asian woman or his bodyguard. One of the two are, while they're holding him, after he was shot, they shoot him through their jacket. So basically, you could have you could hide a gun in your jacket, and just point it, out, and shoot somebody point blank, without anybody seeing you. And the only evidence of you shooting that person is, your jacket has a hole in it. Now, of course, this could all be, nonsense, conspiracy theory. Who cares? The point is that the NOI takes the fall, right? The NOI takes the fall. We all figure, we talk about it, man, black folk killing black folk, In the case of Dr. King, it's this poor white boy, and I don't mean poor white boy like, oh, poor, pity him. No, I mean like he was probably not well-to-do, right? So, he's not necessarily a black kid. But of course, everybody knows Jesse Jackson, happened to, well, some people speculate that Jesse Jackson, definitely was setting up, the good doctor, if you will, or the good reverend, if you will. Well, I know, oxymoron, right? Good reverend. Anyway, but I'm saying all that to give you context of, black folk doing in black folk is a common phenomenon. Not even just, when it comes to, quote unquote activists, being murdered by askari or being murdered by assassins. But even if you go into like urban cities, in urban cities, you have black folk killing black folk, right? You have, like gangbangers, you have gang members, you have so on and so forth. And to a large degree, to a large extent, it's socioeconomic. But we must also consider that, other people would say it, right? Other people would say something like, hey, you know what? If white folk wanted to, they could clean up the hood, overnight. And we know this to be true because anytime some little trust fund white boy wants to move in on a black neighborhood, gentrification, cleans up that neighborhood miraculously. You know what I mean? Like that they, the community suddenly has clean water. You know what I mean? The community suddenly, has, it's not a food desert. The community, suddenly, has a, heavy, like a effective policing. Suddenly, just because trust fund boy wanted to, be around where he saw a picture of, he's like, oh well, so I know I read about a black man who grew up in this neighborhood and I just want to be a part of it, And once he does that, all the white folk come in. But basically, the main thing there is that technically, if white folk wanted to clean up a neighborhood, they could do it overnight, and technically, you could say the same for black folk, except for the fact that we don't really have a functioning government, and there's like the bigger difference between white and black folk, and you probably already know that if you've been listening. But urban cities have a lot of black death, and a lot of it is at the hands of other black people. And just for record's sake, the term black on black crime, it actually has a relevance here, in the sense of it's a term that, like, I wrote about it on my social media, on my Twitter. So definitely try to follow me. Definitely try to look it up. I would look it up right now, but why bother, right? But the whole black on black term, like the origins of it, is it was from like a magazine in like 1968 or something, or a newspaper in 1968 that was discussing a riot, and it was kind of giving a rationale for police intervention, in this riot. And actually, that's a really relevant point to make here, a really relevant point. And, mostly because, it kind of goes back into this whole black assassins for black activists, a basic war tactic, like it really goes into that point. But because it's going to be a short one, I figure, let's go into a break, right? And then we're going to come back on the other side.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Greetings, family. This is Koku, host of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. In case you didn't know, we have an online book club called the Bitter Medicine Book Club. Every month, we will select a book to inspire the Bitter Medicine Podcast listening audience to read along together. At the end of the month, we will have a call-in show and book discussion. This is a great, dynamic way for readers to not only enjoy a book, but also have others to bounce ideas off of. They say if you want to keep anything away from black people, put it in a book. Don't allow this to be true. Head over to bittermedicineblogs.com and subscribe to our newsletter for important updates. Do that today. Join our reading collective today and empower yourselves, your family, and your community. Peace and blessings. You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio.
Okay, so obviously, if I'm going to ask if it's a basic war tactic, I'm going to show you how it's a basic war tactic. And, unfortunately, while I was talking about it, I came upon the other, I just remember the other issue to it. And one of the things with warfare, right, in general, right, is that in warfare, it is preferential that you don't lose, that you don't lose a life. You know what I mean? Like, you don't take any casualties. Like, if you could win a war without taking any casualties, like, that's an optimal condition for war. Mostly because, war is, so basically, look at this. White people say it this way. White people say it this way. War doesn't determine who was right. War determines who is left, Like, it doesn't determine who was right, it determines who was left, And by left, it means, who's left standing. So basically, if you win a war, it's the terms of peace that you're really fighting for, Another white person, Augustine, some of you would call him Saint Augustine, but, Augustine, says it. Although, it's hard to tell, really, the ethnicity of Augustine, because he was born in Africa, but you don't really know. Like, there's no way to know, I've never seen any indication of him. Besides some, images that were, made of him, but of course, this is, after the time where white people just started making images of non-white people as white people, so it's hard to say where he's from. But I would venture towards, if not white, really, really whitened, as I say that, like, he's white in mind or whatever, right? But Augustine did say there can be war without some kind of peace, but there cannot be peace without some kind of war, or the other way around. Actually, let me look up that one, because that one's actually, you want to be accurate for that. So I go to my website and I look up the collected quotes, and it says, "So there may be peace without war, but there cannot be war without some kind of peace." So I'm going to say that again. He says, Augustine says, So there may be peace without war, but there cannot be war without some kind of peace, right? And this is one of those important. This is one of those relatively more useful, tidbits that white people say. It's one of those more useful tidbits. And I'm just wondering if you guys want me to include these kind of things inside of another book, because for the Pro-Black Compendium I really avoided using white quotes, with the exception of course of the rules of warfare, but I avoided using these white quotes because we shouldn't have to deal with that. But these are quotes that I could at least offer some analysis on, so that you could better understand white folk. Kind of like hearing white folk from the horse's mouth. Like hearing it from the horse's mouth, which is just to get off topic, because again, like I said, it's going to be a short one, so I might as well speak a little bit, just elucidate, educate a little more, right? From the horse's mouth is a reference to, let's say if you're betting on horses, and somebody might say that they're so confident that this horse would win that they heard it from the horse's mouth, so it's a little bit stupid, a little silly, but now right? Cue the more you know jingle, right? Anyway, so Augustine says again, so there may be peace without war, but there cannot be war without some kind of peace. And the idea there is that you can have peace without just peace. You could just have peaceful people, peace, that's what we had, peace without war. But you have to understand the European psyche, or the Eurasian psyche, right? Which is that their war is to bring about some kind of peace. You understand? And you kind of would get an impression of this if when you open the Pro-Black Compendium to the poem titled Peace, you get an impression of what that means, right? So I'm going to tell you what page that is. That's on page 109, So reread that poem Peace. That's actually, like you really should read that poem once again, page 109, read the Peace poem, and you'll understand better exactly why white people are doing what they're doing, because and what they really are aiming for. But again, war basically, so if you're fighting a war and you don't take any casualties, that means you can fight another war just as easily. You get what I'm saying? So if, for instance, white folks say, hey, look, we want black folk to, occupy the lowest social strata of their society, right? And black folk don't put up a fight, right? Then these same white folk can go over to another black nation and say, hey, we want you to occupy the lowest strata. And they're just as strong, and actually, unfortunately, they're even stronger because they can take some of our black forces. They have Askari, So really, truly, you got to understand. Like this is part and parcel of why you have to understand what white people are going for. Like why you have to understand what white people are going for in order for you to really fight with them, because a lot of people say, hey, look, there's no point in fighting them. Why would you fight them? Why would you, they're strong, they're this, they're that. Yeah, but you're always going to be in the lower strata if you don't fight. And not just that, but you're going to weaken everybody else collectively by not weakening your opponent. You understand? And that's really the big difference, that's really the big difference. And there's not much else I could say about that. So let's jump to some of these rules of warfare that would explain why you have black assassins for black activists, right? And here's a big one, right? I actually, when I used to have the 8-week disciplinary program, I had this quote in it, but every time it came up, it kind of just didn't seem like it kind of seemed out of place. Like I added it for some reason, but then I decided to take it out. So in the Pro-Black Compendium, you don't have this quote. But of course, this quote is online on my website, under the, a page called General Rules of Warfare, and I'll consider if I'll, add it to another whatever. But here's what the quote says. It says, if some on the side of the enemy desert to come to your service, if they be loyal, they will always make you a great acquisition. For the forces of the adversary diminish more with the loss of those who flee than with those who are killed, even though the names of the fugitive is suspect to the new friends and odious to the old. So I'm going to say this in language that white people would understand, and therefore you would understand what this means to white people in regards to you, right? So it says, if some on the side of black people desert to come to your service. So if some black people decide to desert the black side and come to your service, which is a lot of you, okay, a lot of you are doing exactly that. Matter of fact, 98%, right? But not just, and not just work, obviously, but even if you were to, exclude work, there's a lot of black folk who are just in the service of white folk. Real talk, right? So if some on the side of black folk desert to come to your service, to white service, right? To white servitude, if they are loyal, which they are, right? For the most part, we're not talking about the spook who sat by the door. We're talking about, the people he competed against. You know what I'm saying? They will always make you a great acquisition. So he says, black servitude will make you a great acquisition. For the forces of black folk diminish more with the loss of their cowards. Okay, with the loss of those who flee to come to your service. That they become weaker if they have people amongst them. If some black people, like Askari, if they flee, than if they were killed, right? So if you kill an Askari, right, it's worse. If the white man kills Askari, it's worse for the white man than if he were to let the Askari serve him, right? Because yeah, and it's obvious why. Because again, it's obvious why, but I'm going to finish this quote, right? Because even though the Askari is suspect to the new friends, right? Even though that Askari will be suspect to other white people, right? And his name will be odious to the old, like odious to black folk, like for instance, Al Sharpton, we're like, oh man, Al Sharpton ain't shit, or oh, sorry, I shouldn't curse, but Al Sharpton ain't nothing, or Farrakhan ain't nothing, even though we might say that, they do a bigger service for white people in the vein that and it's better for them to be alive and quote unquote cooning, or alive and being Askari than for them to be dead to the white man. And part of the reason, of course, is because one of the things is this, like I said, you don't want to take any casualties. If black folk revolt against Askari, white folk don't take any casualties. I almost feel like going on commercial for just that. You understand? If black folk target Askari, white folk don't take any casualties. And that's something that you have to remember too. I'm doing a really bad job on my social media. Right now I have I have a good number of followers. I appreciate all of them. 423, not bad. I used to complain about, but I used to talk about, another number. And so, this course is improvement. But the reason why I'm not doing well on social media is because I'm starting to realize that you have to really engage in a lot of infighting or even outfighting. But a lot of it is, like people who are popular are more or less, oh man, look at this coon and look at this Ascari and look at this, and it's like, I'm not really, I'm not, oh, let me confront, this brother or sister, I'm not really like that, I mean, the only thing that I do that's controversial is when some, Ascari passes away. I don't really, like, I don't really, I don't really care, you know what I'm saying? But, that's for a whole other reason. But, I mean, partly actually because of this, not because of this quote, but, like, I guess this quote could kind of give you, an explanation. But the whole thing is that's it, And the reason why I took it out of the Pro-Black Compendium, if you will, was because, when I was having these discussions, a lot of times when this quote came up, people would, say, we would say, it seems like it's suggesting that you can, get white folk to, ally with you, yada yada, and just didn't seem like something that like, it wasn't a thought I wanted our people to entertain, just yet. I'm gonna say, because like I said in the last podcast, it's very nuanced, and like our people aren't ready for the nuances, because again, this is I'm discussing right now basic war tactics, but these are war tactics that use against us. So again, like I said, black assassins, or even Ascari, or even urban death. A lot of it is let's say you have a goal, you have a mission, let's get these black folk, let's kill black folk, right? Part of it right here, as you can see, is that on the real, well, he doesn't mention it in this quote, but on the real, white folk don't lose nothing if black folk are killing each other. Alright, white folk don't lose anything if black folk are killing each other. You know what? We're going to go to another break. You think about that one, okay? Oh, and actually, matter of fact, I got a new Pro-Black Compendium commercial, so listen to this one intently. So let's think about that. You think about it after the break.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Black people face one problem: the problem of ignorance. This is why those who opposed us stole us from our parents, disconnected us from our continent, and enforced on us illiteracy. But now the ignorance is self-inflicted. We send our children to their machines. We detach ourselves from our motherland, and we don't read meaningful literature. Consciousness is a series of stages. The sooner we get to one, the sooner we are ready for the higher. The Pro-Black Compendium accelerates the beginner to the advanced and provides for the advanced an unparalleled breadth. This is the sort of book your enemies do not want you to read, but our ancestors would insist you read twice.
You are listening to the Pro-Black Perspective on KWAZ Radio.
Okay, so we're back. Yeah, again, and see this right here too. Like, even though the name is Fugitives is suspect to the new friend and odious to the old, because the one thing you got to realize with white people is that they're not like by and large they're cowards. They are not brave individuals. They don't want to be hurt. They don't want to die. And I'm not saying that we like to be hurt or we like to die, but I mean, I expect, let's just say we're braver, a lot braver, right? Or, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, right? No, I'm not speaking for myself. We're a lot braver, right? And so, just the idea that, hey, you know what? If I can get black folk killing black folk, right? Like they would rather black folk kill each other slowly than for black folk to kill some white folk while white folk kill black folk. But basically, to them, white lives matter. If that makes sense, So that's one of the reasons why you would choose. That's one of the reasons why you would have like urban city deaths, and so on, right? But then, of course, the question of the assassination of, black folk at the hands of black folk, or even at the hands of police officers. Why police officers, right? And for that, right, that right there is a whole other question, Anyway, so what we go now to is, we go to Sun Tzu, right? And so, Sun Tzu would say that there's 5 important things in war, and the way how he writes it, or the way how it's translated by like one of the more common translations, is a little bit obscure. So I'm gonna do another translation, which says that the 5 things you gotta pay attention to is weather, terrain, leadership, military doctrine, and most importantly, moral influence, right? And the idea here is that you have to maintain the will of the people, right? And so when it comes to black assassins, or even when it comes to urban killings, urban death, right? The reality is that the thing that we don't really see is that white folk try to assume the moral high ground, and unfortunate for us that we don't understand that. I'm talking about we as black nationalists, right? Sometimes we kind of close our ears to the nonsense that like let's say the Askari speak. We say, yo man, you a coon, man, shut up, right? But a lot of times we close our ears to them, and in so doing, we kind of like we block ourselves from understanding white folk. If you understand what I'm saying? I mean, like how do I say it? Like the coon or the Askari, if you will, right? They let you know how white folk think because they think like white folk. And when you understand how white folk think, you kind of could see more so what is going on than otherwise. Than if you kind of was like, hey, you know what? I don't care. I just know how I'm supposed to think. Like again, you want to know yourself, but you also want to know your enemies. You want to know what's going on. So again, when I say moral influence, this was in the context of the Vietnamese War, right? And essentially, even the Civil Rights Movement. But in the Vietnamese War, that the U.S. engaged against Vietnam, Vietnam wins. Okay, the U.S. does not win the Vietnamese War, notwithstanding that the Vietnamese are, really under-equipped, undermanned, everything, right? That they still win, and of course they engage in really effective guerrilla warfare. Don't get me wrong, right? But a part of the reason why they lose is because of the anti-war movement going on in America. Essentially, the moral high ground isn't American anymore, or isn't American at all. You know what I'm saying? Like America's literally going over to another nation to kill them for pushing the French out of their country, out of their nation. So they beat out they beat the French, right? And then America goes in, pretty much just because they beat the French, pretty much, and it's like there's no moral reason to be in there, if you will. And then you see the devastation that America's doing there, or the devastation is colossal, right? Like and they're showing videos back, and it's like, yeah, that's like what can you say, And it's the same with the American Civil Rights Movement, quote unquote, right? Where, I mean, I don't know if I should even use that term. Maybe I should. I really don't. Never really thought about it. But in the Civil Rights Movement in America, black folk would walk, peacefully, do things that you would expect a quote unquote free person, law abiding person to do, and then they're just beat over the head for it. Beaten, dogs set on them, water hoses on them. Just a real brutality for a peaceful, non-resistant, group of individuals, and that pulls on the heartstrings, or pulls on the moral compass of white folk and black folk, But I know some of you are hearing that and saying, wait a second, hold on, you just said moral compass of white folk. Why would you say that, right? But you gotta work with me here, because there is something that we have to understand, right? And again, it comes back with the coon, because like I said, I'm related to a coon, and what he gave me some insight into how coons think just by listening to him, right? But mainly, you also have to, one thing that you want to know about me is that once upon a time I was studying, ethical philosophy, ethics, and I realized that if you're trying to be, let's say, for lack of a better word, charming, right? Or if you're trying to do a good speech, you're trying to get people to do something, right? You can make a moral appeal. And what you realize is that a lot of times white people are making moral appeals to white people for what they're doing against you. You understand? But sometimes they can't justify it. Like attacking, like attacking a child, or whatever is harder to justify. But again, you have to also realize that white people can skew the message, skew it. Like, for instance, I was in a park, and there was this little kid. I believe the kid was saying ICs, like he had ICs, because I looked over to him, and he had like some sort of green thing in his hands, and I thought he was saying ICs. There was a woman there, however, who thought he said ISIS, and she wanted to leave. And of course, I was like, that's just ridiculous, because why would ISIS be in the middle of a park, with their family, just chilling and playing, right? Didn't really add up. But she's like, hey, they use kids, for their attacks. And that's something important that you have to understand, that America would make the argument that, let's say after they slaughter children, right? They slaughter these, these other Eurasian children, right? But they slaughter these children. And you shouldn't really, like I said, you don't have to sympathize against Eurasians, right? Obviously. But just for the context, they slaughter these kids, right? Or they bomb their school, but then they justify it morally in the minds of Eurasians, and of course, some Africans, right? They justify it by saying, oh, well, the kids are in on it too. You understand? Or the kids they use the kids as weapons. You shouldn't even trust the kids. If you kill the kid, well, the kid was potentially an enemy too. You get what I'm saying? There's a moral justification, and you kind of pick up on it more if you were to watch Nazi propaganda. Okay, not really like for entertainment or anything, but just for instructions on necessarily on how they use a moral appeal to justify doing things that would otherwise be seemingly immoral without it. So for instance, how they represent or misrepresent the Jew, or how they how they tend to blame them for an economic depression, how they claim that they have immoral practices, how they might say they attack their women, all that kind of stuff. But then of course you come back to us, when they were lynching black men and black women, right? What did they say, and really what was going on? So maybe you might have an entrepreneurial black person just doing business for himself, yada yada, but they say, hey, he raped a white woman, and then so there's some moral justification for they do a moral justification for murdering a black person, because even today some people would say if you rape somebody, that's like capital punishment. You get what I'm saying? Or that's some sort of punishment. So you got to understand that there's this moral, like there's this moral influence that people try to wield, to essentially not seem like the bully bad guy. And actually, if you want to go back to the civil rights movement, it's this moral thing that these that was trying to be, that black people were trying to use when they purposely selected Rosa Parks, as opposed to the young sister who didn't give up her seat before then. I wanna say her name is oh man, I can't believe hold on a second. Yeah, see, Claudette Colvin. Claudette Colvin. Yeah, I was thinking, Claudia Jones was in my head for a second, so I decided to look it up. Now, some people would say, some people who don't understand war tactics, or even white people, might say, well, Claudette Colvin was passed over because she was darker complexioned, right? Which is, it's not, it's just like, it's kind of like, it's weird, it's just a weird thing to say, really. Like if you don't understand the context that it's in, I mean, it's possible, but it's just unlikely. Either way, Claudette Colvin's was, different from Rosa Parks in so many ways, but in the main way is that Rosa Parks was, like a organizer in the NAACP, Rosa Parks was an organizer in the NAACP, and she like a national secretary or something. She was secretary of the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP, and it was a planned thing. And then she was gainfully employed, good, this, that, so on and so forth, and contrast that to Claudette Colvin, who was, just a 15, she was just a 15-year-old girl, and at the time, obviously, and apparently, like white people scrutinize, like basically the moral thing, how, like I think it's important, after Trump won the election, I took a slight interest in American politics, just because I was just like, what, all right, and what happened was, you would see these, I think her name is, like this white woman, Kellyanne Conway, right? she would just spin anything, just spin anything. And that's the thing that you gotta realize, that's something that, it comes from ideology, obviously, but the reality is that white people can spin anything. And so you have I believe Claudette Colvin was pregnant at the time, like she was 15, or she was pregnant. Let me see. I think she was pregnant. Hold on a second. Oh, no. So they're saying that. Yeah, so they're saying she wasn't pregnant. She was messing with a married man or something like that. Well, here's what they say. They said black leaders did not publicize. This is obviously Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. But black people did not publicize Colvin's pioneering effort because she was a teenager who was reportedly impregnated by a married man. However, she actually did not become pregnant until later, right? Yeah. Now, of course, again, like I said, you got to go for the moral influence, and the reality is this: that, like I said, I have a relative who's a coon. The coon relative, like, I remember one time, like, basically, if you come to him about a situation of police brutality, right, you got to come correct, because always they're going to like the coon is going to look for something that the black person did wrong, and a lot of times that's the case. Now, some cases, and not to say that this is the case of some black person doing wrong, and it's not like again, the bigger meta is that white people are policing black folk, and white people are looking to kill black folk. That's the bigger meta, okay? But all the same, again, you're in a nation where these are people who have the legal right, the police have the legal right to do what they're doing anyway, to kill you, whatever, because they're basically derivative of the overseer who have that same right, to just kill you on sight. So it's not like, and actually I think some white boy, like I said, straight from the horse's mouth, some white police officer was saying the phrase "stop resisting" is just something that they say, even though you can't like not resist. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're being strangled, you can't just like, oh, okay, let me go limp. You know what I mean? I mean, you could technically, but it's just you would die. You would just die while you're being strangled. To just go limp. So part of you is like, no, I want to like live. So you want to kick your legs, you want to, but they're saying stop resisting. But it's part of the moral influence, because again, somebody watching the video, like the white public watching the video, would say, there you have it. This person was resisting. Like contrast that to another, like actually there was an example of this one black boy, a black young man, I guess, right, who was told to like two police officers gave him different orders, like contradictory orders. So he did one of them, and then he tried to do both, and they zapped him. But that's the thing though. It's like, that's the thing. There's a like white people would look at that and say, well, he did not follow the instructions of one of them. You get what I'm saying? Because technically you can't really hear you'd have to listen. You'd have to listen like a multiple times to hear the other person. But only in like certain cases can they say, can even a coon say, well, that's not right. You understand? And so that's the same thing with regards to Rosa Parks. It's like you pick, or even like Henry Louis Gates Jr. When a young black man is harassed by the police, or like if he's running, or if he's if he's doing something, if he's talking back to the police, if he's doing any of that stuff, or if he's reaching for things, if he's moving, if he's twitching, any of that stuff, like anything that happens after that, like white people and, and Ascari, if you will, right, will say, well, he shouldn't have done that, and again, of course, the larger narrative is that, white folk are policing black folk, and that's the problem. You get what I'm saying? Like black folk are, prisoners of war, and that's really the problem, and that's really what we have to fight against, obviously. But in the context of America and Americanisms, you realize that you're dealing with the people who would look to justify the situation, and white people prey on that. You get what I'm saying? White people want both other white people and black folk to look at white people as that sort of influence. And actually, and again, that ties into the phrase black on black violence, which I guess I might as well, read to you, the origin, because it touches back onto that situation. Let me see. Yeah, so here's the first use of the phrase black on black violence. So it says, first off, let me just read this right here. So the term originated during the race riots in the USA in the late 1960s. The earliest record I can find is of the print in this piece from the Chicago Daily Defender, March 1968. So it says, the violence of black man stabbing black man, mugging black man, stomping black man, raping black woman, black on black, and a black crime against a black gets canceled out in the mind of a white precinct commander, right? So, like again, you kind of see this, this white precinct commander, the white intervention, namely in the face of black killing black doing against black, right? Now it's possible that, I'm misreading this maybe, but later on, at least today, that's the implication, right? So the heavy police presence in a violent black neighborhood is justified. You understand? In the minds of Ascari and white folk, right? In the minds of your enemies and Ascari, who some will say, enemies too, right? But in their minds, it's justified. Why? Because first off, who else would do it? In their minds, in the American milieu, who else should be enabled to do it? Because again, it's white folks' nation, and that's something that we don't really pick up on. It's their nation. They're supposed to police their own nation. So a lot of us might be like, well, we should police ourselves. Well, when you get your nation, or when you work on getting a nation, then you can police yourself. But until then, it really like it wouldn't make sense to anyone except for you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, or except for us. But it really wouldn't make any sense in a national, like you didn't really earn it yet. You gotta fight for something. You gotta fight for it. You gotta fight for it, but you haven't fought for it. So you're just saying it. It's just rhetoric. But and that's part, and that's it really. Like you just haven't fought for it. You didn't win it yet. You're just saying it, and it wouldn't really make sense to most people who are listening to you, because they say, hey, well, you already have a police force. You're already in a nation. You're a citizen. You're this. You're that. When of course you're not. You're not really in a nation. You're not really you're subjected to a nation. But of course, that's more nuanced. It's more advanced. It's more so on and so forth. But just going back, they have that moral yada yada. Now, go, and then even that, and I want to say, just go on this other, like explain a little more too. Like you go to this guy Trump, right? He's talking about, immigration, and he's not saying, hey, look, we're looking to rip their families apart. Look at the spin doctors again. The Republicans would deny they're putting kids in cages. They deny this. They don't concede to that point. Instead, they say, hey, look, these people are breaking the laws. These people are rapists. These people are gangbangers, right? And if they're rapists and gangbangers, sure, you can misuse and abuse them. You understand? Or if you're doing, and of course, if you're the police are going out, and this let's just tie it all back together, right? Part of the reason why you have urban violence as it is, right, notwithstanding that white folk want black death regardless, is because what would it look like, right, if white folk were just rolling up in the hood shooting black folk? You understand? What would it look like to other white people, but also what would it look like to black people? And again, just like this is the same with the assassination of Malcolm X and so on and so forth. What would it look like to black people if white people got up in the NOI meeting, or not the Nation of Islam meeting, the Afro-American Organization of Unity? Hey, let me see. Hold on a second. I believe it's AAOU. No, it's OAAU. So Organization of Afro-American Unity, right? What would it look like if white folk were just sitting down and they were like, hey, get your hand in my pocket, and then they got up and shot Malcolm X? Like, it wouldn't even, like, it'd just be a clear, okay, white folk are the enemies, right? As opposed to black folk doing it, and you're like, you know what? Black folk and white folk are my enemies. Or even you might just say, black folk are my enemies. You know what I'm saying? Like there goes some confusion over there. And the same thing with the hood. What would it look like if white folk just rolled up in the hood who weren't police officers? You get what I'm saying? Just the same as, when they harassed Henry Skip the Truth Gates, when they harassed Skip the Truth Gates, like everybody, like even the president at the time, the president of the United States at the time, chimed in on it, because it's like, why are you harassing this good brother, or even like with the brothers in the Starbucks, like they're just sitting down, there's no moral, there's no there's no moral high ground, if you will, and that's the thing that even in warfare you wanna have, even in warfare. And so, another aspect of why there's a black assassin, or even why there's a poor white person killing Dr. King, as opposed to, these highly paid CIA agents, the thing is that you don't want the state is not trying to have its hand, or not trying to reveal its hand in the murder of its own, or the murder of the people, because then, clearly the state declares itself the enemy of black folk, as opposed to some poor white racist bigot that takes the fall, or some NOI, black agency, where now all of us are like, oh man, I can't mess with the NOI. You know what I'm saying? Now we should have never messed with them, of course, but again, there's the psychological, it makes you feel like, hey, black folk, like black, it gives you that impression. It's not the same as if white folk would just roll up, because that would be a more clear demonstration of what's going on. So of course that's another aspect to it, deception. So, there's the moral high ground, because if you had it on video, if you had it on declaration, white folk just walk, like when the white boy, blew up a church with these, and 4 girls died as a result. That was clearly, like there was no moral high ground there. And then if the state doesn't prosecute those, the bomber or whatever, again, there's no moral high ground for the state. You know, it makes black folk clear, it makes them see, yes, that's more evident. Now, if a black person devised the bomb, right, and the state killed the black person, right, whole different story. Black folk now get the impression that the state is for them and that black people are their enemies. You get what I'm saying? So to a large extent, you know, that right there is more in line with, or at least gives you some insight into, you know, war tactics and of course why we should study war. You know, why we should study warfare, why we should study, you know, war tactics, because again, you know, a lot like the alternative of, let's say, white folk rolling up on Malcolm X, or white folk rolling up on Dr. King, or white folk rolling up in the hood. You know, like if drones were just shooting brothers in the hood, you know, that's a whole different story. You know what I mean? That's a whole different, you know, the hood would say, hey, look, let's stop fighting, or well, they might not say that necessarily, but you know, a lot of people would will be of the opinion that, hey, you know, these people are our enemies. But even if you go in the hood, you know, the police are not necessarily as, you know, like some people aren't necessarily like they're still calling the police for help, as far as I understand. I mean, that's what the police say, you know, so I couldn't necessarily say otherwise. But like the police are not necessarily the, you know, there are some black neighborhoods that once upon a time the police couldn't even walk into it. You know what I'm saying? Because they would just, you know, attack the police on sight. Those, like, I don't think those neighborhoods are still around. Not just because the police crackdown, but because, you know, like, police understand, like again, a basic war tactic. You know, you got black folk killing black folk. You know, you got black folk turning on black folk, and that's really it. You know, that's really it. You know, you could get the same black death, same black genocide, same black folk holding black folk down, right? But without any casualties on the part of white folk. White folk who just want to go back to their families, you know, yada yada, quote unquote, you know, who feel like their white lives matter. So I'll leave you guys with that. A little longer than I expected, but definitely check out, you know, my other literature. You know, check out my website. Check out these books I wrote. Check out Zuberi. Zuberi is an excellent read. You know, just heard from a reader that his really 12-year-old brother, you know, read the book and he enjoyed it, you know, thoroughly, you know, and of course, you know, this reader enjoyed it as well. So, you know, and I want to hear more of those stories. So definitely come through. Tell me what it is. Also, feel free to hit me up on WhatsApp. You know, just contact me however you want and let me know. Some people have been giving me some voice messages. One of the brothers sends me, you know, like video updates of you know, how he's like things he's doing, and it's pretty interesting. Apparently he went to a Black Lives Matter meeting and like took over. You know what I mean? Just took over and let people know that they could read some science fiction. They can you know they can study some Amos Wilson. They can study so on and so forth. Now, of course, the brother ain't mentioned me. That's you know, I mean, it's cool to mention Amos Wilson, obviously. So I'm not really, you know, too tight. But, you know, that really brings me back to this other book by Marcus Garvey, where this is one of the things I learned when I was really young, or when I was younger, was, you know, Marcus Garvey said that when you got to talk to everybody you meet, like talk to everybody. But when he says talk to everybody, it's something that you have to understand. When he says talk to everybody, he doesn't mean just chat with them. He means talk to them about the UNIA. But for me, I want to tell you to talk to everybody, but not like about the UNIA, not about, you know, I mean, the UNIA is still existing, so if you want to be a UNIA member, you know, go for that. I'm not saying otherwise. But what I mean is talk to everybody you know of about the book. Okay, the books. Or even this podcast, but mainly the books, right? talk to everybody you know and let them know that, you know, they should get it and they should read it, and there's a lot in there for them, and try to relate what's in them for them. You know, try to relate that. You know, really get people reading, because, you know, I believe that if our people are reading this book, we're going to be in a better spot. You know, I don't know if you were paying attention during the commercial, but I updated this aspect of I updated a description of the Pro-Black Compendium, which you write a review for me, okay? Write a review. But what I'm saying is that, you know, like, consciousness develops is a series of stages, you know, and the sooner we get to one, the sooner we can get to the higher ones, you know, the sooner we're ready for the higher ones. And so, you know, this is a book that, like, really can get either beginner or advanced thinkers, you know, on a better, more refined track, you know, and I really would appreciate if you had a copy, you read the copy, and you contacted me. You know, hit me up on WhatsApp, hit me up on email. I got some really interesting emails from Lisa, who, yeah. So those are really interesting. Basically, she was asking me about, you know, certain segments of like conflict resolution, and those are something that we all can, like, benefit from, you know. So definitely hit me up. You know, hit me up on WhatsApp. Hit me up on Twitter. And, you know, you're listening to KWAZ Radio. You know, definitely check out Bitter Medicine podcast. They you know, listen to the book club that they had, or that they still have, but they were reading King Leopold's Ghost. Listen to that one. But yeah, thanks so much for listening here, and I'll talk to you, you know, when I talk to you. Shemi Imhotep. Thank you for listening. I invite you to join hands with your brothers and sisters as we recite the African affirmation together. It's a call and response, so follow my lead. We are an African people, robbed from our homeland, robbed of our names, our languages, our cultures, our religions, our womanhood, our manhood, our sisterhood, our brotherhood, our motherhood, our fatherhood, our selfhood, our nationhood, and our self-respect. But we shall rise, never to fall again. Up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.